One more interesting example on positional sacrifice topic happened in one of my games 1 month ago in the European Individual Chess Championship. So let's look at the opening first. It's Catalan defense. Bishop G2 and E4. So first, branching point E6 or A6 or C6. C6 is the main move, but during the game I decided to avoid theory. I played A6, no A4, and now I went for the sacrifice from this position. It's already kind of forced. If I play C5, if White wants to fight for initiative, he should go for D4, D5 here, because if he goes for Bishop E3, it poses no problems to Black, because I simply take, like Queen D4, and then simply Knight C5. White takes the pawn back, and then I simply exchange queens, like Queen D3. Queen takes, Knight takes D3. And Black is completely fine. Then I want to complete development by playing Bishop D7, Bishop C6. So, after C5, what else can White play? For example, E5. If White plays E5, then I play Knight D5. And it looks that White cannot do much. For example, he takes, I take. And White doesn't have any opportunity to create the attack on king side, and Black is simply pawn up. So D5 was a critical continuation, which I had calculated. So I went for E takes D5 and E5 here. The principal continuation. If White plays E takes D5, then Black can continue Bishop D6, blockading the pawn. And it's not so easy now for White to take the pawn back on C4. For example, if Knight D2, then simply Knight E5. And if F4, then Bishop G4. And then Knight comes to D3. So it's not so easy. So E5 was a good move. And now D4, principal continuation. If I go Knight E8, then White simply takes Knight takes D5. White is still a pawn down, but he has a space advantage, he has more active pieces, and he can win the pawn back later without any problems. So I didn't want to get that passive position, so I went for the position of sacrifice D4. E takes F6, Knight takes F6. So let's stop here for a while and let's try to evaluate that position. Black has 3 pawns for the knight. So it's about equal in material, but still, knight is a knight. And that's not endgame. So White should be slightly better in material. But as we see, Black has a very strong center. Central pawns are very strong, they restrict White's pieces. It's not so easy for White's pieces to be developed. So central pawns is the main strength for Black here. So Knight B1 was played. Bishop E6, and here White committed a mistake by playing Knight A3. White was too greedy to start attacking my pawn right away. He wants to play Knight A5 now. Knight A5 is a threat because by playing Knight A5 White will attack the C4 pawn and my pawn on B7 with his bishop on G2. But instead White should have played A5, fixing up my structure, pawns B7 and C4, so I won't be able to protect my C4 pawn by playing B5. So in that case, White could have kept an advantage. But after Knight E3, Black is more than fine, because I'm able to play B5 right away. So look at this nice pawn structure. Those pawns are so strong, and that's only for one knight, for that knight. So I think Black is already fine here, because Knight on S3 is restricted, and pawns can go farther later. So White cannot win the pawn on B5 because of the pin. Knight B5, simply Rook takes A1. It's clearly not working for White. So Knight E5, and here simply Bishop D5. It's good for Black to exchange light squared bishops, because after that White won't be able to create any pressure on the big diagonal. so I will feel more I feel more freedom after that. So knight c6 was played. Of course I don't take bishop takes c6, of course not. I play queen d7, and knight takes, queen takes, and here bishop g5. And here I managed to find a nice trick. Bishop takes g2, king g2, and h6. And white cannot take the pawn on b5 here, because a takes b5, a takes b5, knight takes b5 is not working, because simply rook takes a1, queen takes a1, and queen c6 check, and we create double threat on king on g2 and knight on b5. So we win back the knight, and we will be 2 pawns up after that. So h6 was a good move here, but also black had another possibility by playing queen b7 check, queen f3, and knight e4. That was another good opportunity for black to size up his initiative. For example, if a takes b5, then we take, and knight takes b5. So white is using the pin, so if we take queen b5, then white simply takes queen e4, and he will be a piece up again. So here we play f5. We support our knight with a pawn. So now knight takes so now queen takes b5 is a threat, because our knight on e4 will be protected. So if for example if rook a1, sorry, rook a takes a8, then rook takes a8, rook knight a3, then we simply take queen takes b2, I think. Or simply, I think there is here move c3 as well. Yeah, c3 is working fine for black. So white cannot take b takes c3 because of rook takes a3. And how to play else for white? He can never take on f5 because of the pin on the diagonal. So as we see, black is winning here. So that was another possibility for me to play, which I had missed. Queen b7, queen f3, knight e4. So as we see, those pawns are really strong, which they support many tactical ideas. So queen b7. Okay, instead I played h6, take, and queen f3. As we remember, a takes b5 is not working, so queen f3. Okay, I'm not against the queen's exchange. I think it's fine, because I have 3 pawns for the knight, and as we see, the knight is very passive on a3. It's restricted by black's pawns. It cannot go anywhere. So a takes b5, a takes, and after rook fc1, I went for forced draw. I wanted to force a draw with black. I thought it would be a good result against 2650 player. But after the game, I realized that I could have played for more than a draw. So, for example, I could have played rook f e8. So, by material, the position is about equal, because knight is costs about 3 pawns. But in that position, knight is very passive, so it has less value. In the same time, I can create threats to white's king and trying to invade with my pieces. So, for example, rook a b1, then rook e6, and then if rook e1, I simply exchange and play c3, and now white cannot force the drawish rook ending like in the game. And if h4, then simply rook a6, and now I want to destroy the pawn structure by playing c3. And if pawn takes, then I take the knight.